Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 212. And in today's episode, we will talk about new hire safety orientation and specifically the walk-around function. I think all of us, if we think back of episode 210, we did a bunch of new hire safety orientations, got some fantastic tips and tricks, and uh, Jean does a very good job of just making it very interactive, making a person feel good when they come to the site. So that was episode 209 or 212. So go back and listen to that for like a lot of the classroom type things. How do you set up the classroom? How do you make somebody feel good when they come in? So the one thing that I like to do is also do a walk around. Um, Even I, a safety guy, when I sit in a couple of these orientations, my eyes will start to glaze over. And so I think it's at least I found it really helps me to get up. And there's certain things that you really do cover in a classroom, and other things you say, let's just get up and we're going to walk through the plant and we're going to look at exactly what I was talking about then. So let's just kind of go over a few things. Keep in mind, of course, that obviously you can take this and tailor it as you see fit at your plant. Don't think about this list as like the end all be all and it has to fit into these nice categories. Make sure it works for you and what your situation is out there. Uh, so the first thing is that for the most part, I take the person's supervisor also at the same time. There are times when the supervisor is not at the plant. There's just a pressing matter that has to be addressed. So I can't say it's a 100% always every single time, but for the most time the supervisor's there. So they hear the same thing, and a lot of times it's the supervisor who does a great job walking through, pointing out these things, really helping the person understand those kinds of things. And so, a couple of the things that we'll go through building evacuations, and of course, you have your head count areas, shelter in place areas. Like, what do you specifically do um, in these situations? Then, so we talk about the SDS. Where do you find the SDS? How do you locate the SDS? And of course, in the classroom portion, we kind of talk about how you read it in the 16 section format, all that stuff. But literally, where do you find it in the plant? Is it a old school, everything is in a binder by alphabetical order? Or do you have a electronic system? How does the person log in? How do they figure out this stuff? So whatever your system is, and then we also sit down and talk about HouseComm, about the labeling aspect. Then, so a lot of places will get their chemicals in bulk, and by bulk is a gallon or so. That's not always handy for the work site. So then, of course, you take your gallon and put it into a smaller pint size. Everything has to have a label, all that good stuff. Then, so we walk through the lockout tagout on a lot of the pieces of equipment. And even if they're not a person who's going to do this, what they should know is that if the machine doesn't have power, don't just walk to the breaker and say, "Oh, I'll just start flipping stuff." There's a reason why it doesn't have power. Find somebody, make sure that you understand the reason why. So uh, we also talk about things like light curtains and machine guarding, So we have these in place for employee protection. We don't have them in place to slow down production. So if you got to take one off and you're doing maintenance and like our tag out and all that, put one right back on again. PPE locations, and then we talk about if there's let's just call it some kind of a upset condition. There's a reason why that you have to press the EMO, emergency machine off, or the EGO, emergency gas off, on a piece of equipment. And many times it isn't that it's a safety thing. It can also be have to do with something with quality, is that if the machine is not running correctly, you want this thing off. Don't just keep making something bad, afterwards. So those are just a couple of the things that we'll literally sit down and walk through we'll look at any of the lasers out there and how we have the glasses, the interlocks, and all that. And of course, the glasses are just only for very extreme use. Luckily, I've been able to have enclosed ones, and just what does a person really need? Because um, I am a perfect example of somebody who can pass a test, not always know exactly what I was talking about, but I learned that material good, and I took that test and and I passed. It doesn't mean that I can apply it in the everyday work site. So I like to have people also do a walkthrough, just to kind of really it gives them a chance to get up and not just hear droning on and on and on about new hire orientation. So that is it for today's episode, number 212. We talked about new hire orientation. I'd like everybody, if you haven't heard episode number 210, Gene, Gene Nadana does a great job of sitting down talking about the classroom portion and going through really making the person feel good about being there, because let's face it, this is the very first thing they see and they hear most of the time when they show up. There are places that safety is not talked first. I try to make it the very first topic, the very first thing, even before they even talk to HR about things, because I also know with my own selfish intentions that people lose attention as the day goes on. So I get that too. So episode 212 is complete. I want to thank you for joining me. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Thank you and have a safe day.